Longtime elementary school teachers. Which of your former students surprised you the most by their adult life outcomes or personality? I've been on our PTA for a long time. Does that count? There was a very skinny quiet kid who was super smart. The other kids picked on him quite a lot, but he never stood up for himself. I always thought he would work for NASA or something as he was so smart. I saw his LinkedIn a few months ago and he is now a prison officer at a maximum security prison. Not me, but a kid who used to be my friend. He was studios, he got good grades, teachers loved him, he was well behaved, he wasn't bullied, he didn't bully other kids, he had a lot of friends. He wasn't popular, but he wasn't unpopular. He was definitely more popular than me though. No one had a problem with him. Since he got good grades, his parents let him do whatever he wanted. They bought him whatever he wanted. He had the latest video games and consoles as they came out. We loved sleeping over his house because we could stay up all night, jump on the trampoline at 2 in the morning. And we didn't even have to sneak out for mischief, we could just walk out the door. Anyways, he moved in 8th grade. I was sad. A couple years back someone sends me a Facebook message of a local article. This guy stabbed someone 23 times and is awaiting a murder trial. I have no clue where his life took a hard left turn, but it did clearly. Edit, added details. I was voted most likely to burn a book, ended up writing one. The student whose social skills were non-existent and whose academics were equally as troubling is in college taking nuclear physics. I swear he was easily like 3 grades behind when I knew him in primary/junior grades, Canada. I guess my mom might count since she's worked at the elementary school I attended since 1993, but she recently told me about one of my elementary school classmates. I was actually pretty good friends with him. But I thought he was a bit slow. And apparently he had been evaluated for learning disorders several times in early grade school. He apparently just started a surgery fellowship at a prestigious hospital in Philadelphia. He definitely worked very hard in grade school and middle school, and now that I look back, he definitely sought out the smart kids in class and tried to befriend them and see how they thought. I teach English as a second language, and I had a kid who spoke Arabic who barely could master English in the beginning, to be expected of course. Well, 8 years later he's on his way to being an astrophysicist. He came to school to find me to tell me last year, and I've never had a prouder moment teaching. He told me I was the only one who believed in him. My brother was tutored by an elementary school teacher and he was a complete mess of a student as a kid. She was helping him transition from a top prep school to public school because the prep school didn't feel he would ever amount to much in their care. She tried several methods to keep him organized and help his reading skills, to no avail. She continuously checked in with his teacher, worked at the same school, to see his progress, and constantly had to talk to him on behalf of the teacher. Everyone loved him. He was just an utter mess. We ran into her a year ago and got to tell her that he got a full ride to law school at an Ivy League school. Blew her mind, but proved that some kids thrive in different learning environment. Terrible through tradition school, but when he got to college and thrived because of breaks between classes, time to study, picked his classes which were focused, then trying to cover 1,000 topics in a year. And got to know his teachers. Thank goodness for my parents holding out hope all those years, haha. My mom has been a teacher for the past 25 plus years. There was one student in particular that stood out. This kid was insanely smart. In high school, perfect grades. He also got scholarships on scholarships plus full ride to almost any college he wanted. I think he wanted to be a physicist or engineer for NASA. After high school he headed off to college and fell off of everyone's radar for a while. We learned a few years later what happened. The extreme pressure to always be the best ended up getting to him. Everyone in his life understandably had super high expectations for him, but he couldn't handle it. He had a massive mental breakdown and ended up dropping out of college and went to work in some chain fast food place. I didn't know him personally and only met him in passing, but even I was sad. Such a brilliant mind, someone who had a lot of potential reduced to a tiny fraction of himself. It's been several years since then. And I hope he is doing better. Not me, but know a guy, lovely quiet chap who lived to draw. Teacher said his work was no good. went on to be a senior effects artist and later works for a major computer games company and can of course draw. I'm not one of these great success stories, but I'm back home visiting and actually ran into my third grade teacher at Starbucks. I was working on my laptop, work from home, but my parents' Wi-Fi is crap, so I work at Starbucks when I visit. I saw her sit down and it just kept bugging me why she looked so familiar, because I swear when I was in third grade I thought she was at least in her 50s, so she would have to be like in her late 70s now or something like that. Chalk it up to a child's memory. Anyway, when I noticed she was getting ready to leave, I asked if she was MS, third grade, and she said yes with a kind of confused tone, and I explained who I was and that she had been my teacher. She was so excited to see a former student and kept thanking me for taking a chance and saying hi to her, and that she wished more students would do that because she loves getting to hear about her former students' lives. So I guess if you are on the other side of this question and you see a former teacher, don't be afraid to reach out and just say hi, explain who you are, and just thank them for their role in your education. She remembered me as the little girl obsessed with acting and reading, still true today. I had to be tutored for reading during elementary school. The same teacher came to my house after school a few times a week to help me. Years later my mom ran into her and she asked how I was doing. She was so incredibly happy and shocked to hear I was an English major applying to library science graduate programs. Was connected on social media with a former grade school teacher who shared a news article about a former student who got arrested for selling meth with an estimated worth of $500,000. I'm not a teacher, but something along the lines happened to one of the kids I graduated with. She was top of the grade for academics and sportswoman of the year every single year since we were 13. She was head prefect in middle school and head girl of our high school in our matric year. Both her parents were senior management at our old middle school. She was very rich. Both her parents drove sport cars and she got an Audi SUV for her birthday. She also lived in a huge house. Last thing I heard from her is that she got accepted into one of the best universities in the country, Stellenbosch University for veterinarian science. I mean, if anyone was going to succeed it would be her. She's now a secretary at a rundown accounting firm in Pretoria that's badly in debt. She's also been to rehab twice. I have no idea what happened to her, but it just shows, nothing is cast in stone. Not a teacher, but my best friend in high school was the most picked on kid in a high school of 4,000 students. He definitely wasn't much of an academic and seemed destined for barely getting through life. He's now worked his way up in fast food, has franchised a couple Dairy Queens and worked for Homeland Security in between. I had a student that used to get into fights and was extremely aggressive and violent towards others. On the last day of 5th grade, his last words to me and his class were "fudge you." Many years later he came back to the school I'd been teaching at and looked for me so he could give me a big hug and apologize. In his words, "I was garbage when I was here, thank you for putting up with me and I'm sorry." I cried like a baby, I was so proud of him. For me it was year 4 teacher Mr. Hollywell. I was the kid at school that sucked at school, but everyone thought I was dumb. Not this teacher, not this bloke. When I picture the bloke I would say is sort of Freddie Mercury but no overbite. Super flamboyant, he would praise my ridiculous work, he would get me to certificates, he would get me to read out loud Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Turns out I was asked to repeat years multiple times and he went in with my mum and said no. I just need to be taught differently. This is like 1980s, so the shit today with understanding kids just didn't exist. As I went through high school I was again considered a failure, but actually thinking of this fucking legend made me just keep going. I was not a bad student, I love a laugh, a yarn, and hanging out, but did it while pretending to work. Teachers all really liked me, just thought I was dumb. Saw a child something that officially determined Uncle Wumby is lazy. So I always thought I was. Well, it turns out school was boring, so I didn't work hard. I left school, got a job, and since then every job I have had I have excelled at. I have super hard work ethic, I am really quite smart and good in my profession, I am paid really well, and I smash anything I want to do. I just didn't like school. I have tried to find Mr. Hollywell a few times and cannot. He made a huge difference to me. I think of him often and with great respect. If you are reading this, you are a fucking champion and thank you. I started in elementary school. One of my first students I had when she was in 3rd grade. Her father was abusive when she was younger and mom left him and was raising her on her own. But her mom was also heavily involved in gangs. She was very behind compared to the rest of the kids. I had a soft spot for her and she ended up being one of my favorites. Teachers will often say they don't have favorites, but that's a lie. A couple years later I was moved to 5th grade and I had her again. She was struggling a lot by this time. But still I never gave up on her and she never gave up either. Later when she was in 8th grade I was moved to middle school and once again I had her again. By this time her mom's lifestyle had an influence. She always wore red, threw up gang signs and used to get into a lot of fights at school. One thing that was different was she had caught up academically with the rest of her peers. And actually even surpassed them. She used to come by after school and started seeing me as a mentor, and we had a connection as I too was heavily involved with gangs in my teens and early 20s. When she moved on to high school she kept in touch. Her high school was across the street and she used to come by after school all the time to check in. She eventually got involved in student body. Became the senior class president and was on the honor roll all 4 years. She got accepted into all 8 colleges she applied for. She is currently on a full-ride scholarship at Stanford University and plans to continue with graduate school. She is very involved with the community too. She is currently a waitress but is planning in doing big things. I'm so proud of her. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like and subscribe. It's free. Check out some other videos I've made.